All the very best, guys. Cheers, thanks for coming along.
Not at all. Cheers.
Great stuff. Cheers. Right. There's worse ways to spend Monday nights, eh?
Very much so. Very much so.
Right, Angus, you know what to do. Clap us in. Welcome to the Whisky Stories Podcast.
So I'm the co-founder and master distiller, Isle of Raasay. So I co-founded R&B Distillers back in July 2014 with Bill Dobby.
Brilliant.
And now I'm master distiller, whatever that means. But, I sat there with the cellar book, my bottle of Tweed Ale, and my business plan, my idea for the Borders distillery, and pitched it as best I possibly could. And they went, I'm thinking of Raasay. So I thought, that's a no then.
Welcome to the Whisky Stories Podcast with myself, Graeme, and we are back in the Athletic Arms, back in the diggers, and back in the dungeon, nicely sandwiched underneath the gents' toilets and the bar. We've got a couple of guests, but Chuck, how are you first of all? All right?
I'm good, yeah. Not bad. Feeling better after Friday night, but yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, well, as we are recording this, it's the Monday after the Friday before, where we had our big birthday bash, and
it was a great night, and fantastic to meet everyone as well. Lots of listeners, lots of former guests, and just a really good atmosphere.
Party games and fun.
Party games are fun. Most of it went to plan.
And if I get the editing sorted, because as we are recording this, I got home on Friday night, nearly Saturday morning, and I did think to myself, I'm just going to double check I hit record on where I should have hit record. Because believe it or not, we do have previous for that. So I did check the audio coming through okay, and I looked today at the footage, and so there's going to be a bit of editing to go through that. But if I get my editing right, as you're listening to this, last week's episode will have been the big birthday bash. You'll have been playing Ali Baxter's Ali Baxter's bingo with people shouting to us, Ali Baxter's bedroom window.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
We also got that amazing woodcut. We didn't bring the...
from
Cairns
Higgy House.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, I forgot that. That's in my house right now. A lovely, because that would have been very appropriate for tonight. A lovely block, like a chopping block of wood that had been made by Johnny of Higgy House or Higgy House.
Higgy House.
Aye. Shout out to Johnny for that. He made it himself, turned the wood, and it was lovely resin inside with the Whisky Stories logo and like
five
glass
spaces for glasses, and then a perfect place for a bottle as well.
Perfect. And he said he did that because he says this thing when he watches looks a little bit rickety. And I forgot it tonight. But anyway, lads, it's another podcast episode, and we are joined by two guests today. We're joined by Gregor Hunter and Alasdair Day of Raasay, Isle of Raasay Distillery.
Isle of Raasay Distillery, yes.
Gregor, you're Alasdair's agent because it's you that put all this together.
I just thought he's available, so why not have the expert to come along and tell a few stories as well as me?
Yeah, because I've been badgering you for well over a year now to say, why don't you come on the podcast?
It's just the calendars. Couldn't get the calendars working.
And they didn't say that, you said your chat's rubbish.
That goes without saying. So
what do you do with Isle of Raasay Distillery?
So I manage the sales within the UK, or that's what I do now. I've been with the company for just over 3 years, in fact closer to 3.5 years now. Kind of started in a brand ambassadorial role, and then moved more into the sales role, and now manage the UK market, which is I'm based in Edinburgh, but kind of all over the shop.
All over the place.
So.
Fantastic, great. And Alasdair, welcome along. Welcome to the Diggers Dungeon. This is, for some people, the pinnacle of their whisky life that they've made it
can only go up from here. Really.
Well,
literally,
absolutely. You don't want to go any lower. There was a graveyard on either side.
Yeah.
We don't know what's under.
But it's called Diggers.
Well, welcome on. What's your title at Isle of Raasay Distillery?
So I'm the co-founder and master distiller, Isle of Raasay. So I co-founded R&B Distillers back in July 2014 with Bill Dobby.
Brilliant.
And now I'm master distiller, whatever that means. But
I think you're the first master distiller
Quite possibly, yeah.
that we've had on. We've had master blenders. We've had distillers.
We've had distillers, but
but I don't think we've ever had a master distiller. Well, I mean, Craig Johnson is one of the only people in the whisky industry who's been a master distiller and master blender of a distillery, but that wasn't a Scotch one. That was one in Australia. So we're giving you that. You're taking the accolade of that on the podcast. So, right, how does that all start? Talk us through how do you distilling and things. I take it was a passion beforehand. Or?
Yeah, well, so I guess I can trace my family connection to whiskey back to 1820.
Really?
A company called J&A Davison were established in Coldstream in 1820. They were a licensed grocer shop. They were whiskey blenders, and they had the Coldstream Brewery.
Okay.
And my great grandfather left school in 1895 and joined as an office boy. And then in 1923, he took over the whiskey blending side of the business and the licensed grocer shop. And it changed name from J&A Davis to Richard Day.
Wow.
Unfortunately for me, he retired after the Second World War. Obviously, by that, they had to run things down. The company had kind of been split up into various things. The Coldstream Brewery was its own entity. It got bought by Vaux. And he was at retiring age, and he decided that was it. He was going to retire. And my granddad and his two sisters, we would have had to start again from scratch.
Yeah.
So that wasn't it. So my granddad actually went off and became a customs officer, so about as far away as you can get from being a whiskey blender. And it was 2009. It was my mum and dad's. My dad said, "Look, why don't you have the book?" So the book is a cellar book. It's actually a sales ledger for 1881, 1882.
Wow.
But at the back of the book, it's got all the blends from 1899 to 1916. And I had been working in the food industry, and I was like, I'd quite like to work for myself, my own business. And I was thinking, like, do I do haggis or cheese? I was working in the dairy industry. Do I do something like that? And my dad's like, have the book, do something with the book. So in 2009, I decided to recreate one of the whiskies from the book, which is called the Tweed Ale.
Oh, wow.
So Tweed, literally River Tweed. So Coldstream's on the River Tweed in Dale Valley.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in the book, it's got all the recipes for Tweed Ale from 1899 to 1916.
And how detailed are the recipes? Does it go into types of cask or distilleries?
So it's got the distillery, the quantity. Only in the last year of the book has it got year of distillation.
Really?
Right.
Because it was 1914 when you had to first
Oh, right, okay.
record the age, because that's when 2 years old came in.
Okay.
And by 1916 it was 3 years old. So everything prior to 1914 doesn't have a year of distillation in the book. But it does have wonderful things like sherry for colour.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So, because they were a licensed grocer shop, so they obviously they bottled sherry, they bottled claret, they bottled rum, and they blended rum as well. And they would just to keep the consistent colour, they would just add a bit of sherry.
So how faithfully were you able to recreate?
Well, I didn't add any sherry.
Yeah, no.
What I always say is it's the recipe from the book. So it's the same quantities, same distilleries.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now, luckily all open still.
Well, no, there's a few interesting ones in the book that are long gone. There's one called Polo, P-O-L-L-O.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, chicken? What's
Aye.
this? It's like, so anyway, there's a book called Scots Mist, and if you look in there, Polo was near Balblair, and it was the same Ross family that owned it.
Okay.
And when Polo closed, they moved to Balblair, and it had a very similar flavour profile to that. So it's things like that in the book, and then things would be scored out, and he'd write other things in, and you obviously couldn't get that into that. So there's 9 whiskies in the blend, 1 grain, 8 malts, Lowland, Highland, Speyside, and Islay, just one Islay. And there's probably 16 different distilleries that he used.
Yeah.
So that was actually great. So I did the very unsexy thing, put it all on a spreadsheet and grouped it into like, oh well, obviously these are these and these are those, and this is the core malts that are built off. And was able to kind of work out what I was looking for. So as faithfully as I could, it wouldn't taste anything like my Tweed Ale that I made. Wouldn't taste anything like his Tweed Ales because the distillery character then would be way different
The
to
production process from the 1800s to 2020.
It's slightly different,
Aye.
unless you're Springback, and then it's the same.
I mean, I've got a couple of questions on that front. First of all, did you have any connections within the whisky industry at this point, or were you literally sitting there with your spreadsheet going, now I need to try and find this liquid.
So no, I had no connections in whiskey in 2009 at all. I liked to dram, obviously, and
So
worked
where do you
very
start?
hard.
Like, how do you? Because I mean,
That's a crazy network to put together in 5 years as well.
Yeah,
yeah.
I tell you,
'Cause, I mean, when
it
you
was a
think,
steep learning curve.
yeah, I mean, when you think about it, like there's even today, we still learn things about like how you can contact people and how you go about. Is it through brokerages or how do you build relationships with distilleries? And you'll know that yourselves with the distillery, which will come later, and even from your point of view with sales as well, Gregor.
Yeah.
But like, how where does that start then?
So, I mean, I was fortunate. So, if you think about it, when my great-grandfather joined the business, it had been going for 70-odd years.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's 70 years of knowledge, even when he started as an office boy. And then, you know, the recipes from 1899. So, there's over 100 years of whiskey, 130 years of knowledge and recipe captured in that book. So, by just as faithfully as I could, recreating that recipe, and it was 9 distilleries, bought 9 casks and put the quality together. And I bought the 9 casks 2009, 2010. When I bought the 9 casks, I bought them through a broker. Now, in those days, there were still, be careful how I phrase this, there were still reputable brokers with good connections that were buying new make and good casks and maturing it on. They weren't what you think of a whiskey broker now.
This is it. The whiskey broker term is.
So this was back in 2010. That there were still people who had bought new make, who had bought casks, who had matured it on, lying in bond. That were then able to, you know, they were able to go, right, well, you know, I'll get you a sample of this, get you a sample of that. I could put it together in the kitchen at home, and go, this is going to work. I'll buy those casks, and that's how I started.
And was it a kind of very much a homespun thing? Were you bottling at home?
Yeah, so I was still working full time in the dairy industry at the time, and it was very much evenings and weekends. And if you meet my wife Sharon, she will tell you that I was literally in the kitchen mixing things up and made the whole family taste them blind and all the rest of it. So, and so that's how it started.
And when you say the dairy industry, is this dairy farming or?
So it was cheese.
Cheese,
yeah. So at that point, I was working to come. So originally. It was McClelland's cheese, so if you've heard of Seriously Strong, that was
Galloway as well.
Galloway, and then they got bought by like Tallis, who owned President, so you might have President Brie, President Butter. So I got to go round the world and do cheese stuff. So
So that did the family name have a carry into whiskey, like, or had the generations been so distant that you know, because you know that whiskey is a tiny little industry, and if your grandfather, like my grandfather worked in whiskey, there's still a few people in the industry that will say, oh, I remember your grandfather, whereas, you know, now when you were in 2009, the gap was it too big, so you're not able to phone up and say, oh, it's so-and-so's laddie, and they'll go, oh, I'm sorry, it was some cast or anything like that.
There's no cachet. I mean, if you, it's quite interesting. When you look at J&A Davidson's, they were, you know, a proper whiskey blending company, went round the world. I mean, if you think about it, they were established the same year as John Walker and Sons. You know? So that was the era of it, and every town had a licensed grocer shop. Every town had maybe more than one, and that was, you know, the distilleries didn't bottle whiskey. The distilleries didn't blend whiskey. You know, it was the licensed grocers, because of the legislation at the time. So the licensed grocers that bought casks and did the blending. So that heritage existed. But when I went, oh yeah, J&A Davison, Richard Day, and they're like, what? Who?
Yeah.
So no, there's no cachet from that. It was just bit of graft and good fortune.
But I guess you know, from blending in Coldstream, how does that lead to distilling in Raasay?
Yeah, so basically what happened was, as I say, when I started 2009, 2010, you could still get good quality casks at reasonable prices. By 2012 you couldn't. So if you think back to 2012, that's when distilleries were taking their age statements off. That's when Macallan Gold appeared, and that was because the industry was victim of their own success. Stocks became incredibly tight. You couldn't get stock. So I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work. Buying cask and mature whiskey is not going to work. So I'm going to have to do what the brokers were then doing. I was going to have to buy newmake, buy casks and wait. Now, I did the sums to do that, and when I added them up, I thought, God, you build a small distillery for that amount of money. Bing! So actually, rather than buying someone else's newmake and casks, why don't I try and raise the money, the investment to build a small distillery? And of course, I'm thinking Coldstream, the Borders. And cut a very long story short, through that process of talking to people who might be interested in investing in distillery, I met Bill Dobby. And Bill was looking to get into whiskey. He basically is a serial entrepreneur, made all his money from tech businesses. When I met him, he said, yeah, I'm thinking of getting into the industry. I want a legacy business. I want something from my family, a long-term thing. And of course, I went, well, here's a plan for a Borders distillery. And first time I met Bill was in Manor Place, where our office is in Edinburgh. It was November 2013. It was absolutely freezing. It was just one of those really cold days. And I sat there with the cellar book, my bottle of Tweed Ale, and my business plan, my idea for the Borders distillery, and pitched it as best I possibly could. And Bill went, yeah, that's interesting. I'm thinking of Raasay. So I thought, that's a no then. However, it wasn't a no. So Bill bought the disused hotel in Raasay the February after that. And then he said to me, why don't you come up? Why don't you come up? And I went up in May 2014. And we both stood outside this disused hotel, and he's going, what do you think? And I'm looking at the view of Skye, and the whole journey of getting there, and just thought, you know, this is the right place. This is the right place to build a distillery. So,
wow.
Did he have a connection to Raasay?
Yeah. So when Bill was exiting this business, and his mates were all kind of pulling his leg about what you're going to do next and all the rest of it. And is it Harris Tweed bobble hats, or is it, what is it? And they started talking about whiskey. So his oldest friend from school, Ian Hector Ross, who still works for us, went, well, there's this disused hotel in Raasay, you should maybe come and have a look at it. So that was the connection. So Ian's wife's family's from Raasay.
So that's the sort of line.
That's where and it was just one of those conversations, and a bit like me going, I'm going to buy a newmake and mature it, and go, well, actually, build a small distillery. Bill was like, oh, actually.
Yeah, something like that.
And that's where it came together.
That's fascinating. Going back to the blending,
Yep.
It's really interesting. It was really good, in fact, with the exception of us trying to do Bongos Bingo meets whiskey tastings last Friday. But the episodes that we've recorded recently are all accidentally falling in line with conversations. Going back to you talking about what grocers were doing and things like that. Chuck, when we sat with Dougal Gordon, he explained how Glenfiddich were actually one of the first to get licensing for bottling on site, and which was the sort of real starting point of single malt as we know it today. And we
1963.
and we talked about the distiller, how back then, and it's something that it's really difficult to get your head round because we all picture through the marketing that we get looked at for the last 25, 30 years that everyone was these. You use Glenfiddich as an example, the green triangular bottle, it's iconic, yada yada yada. But actually, it was the 50s and 60s where they actually first began bottling on site, and they were one of the few to get grandfather rights, was why they were allowed to do it. Then we got Arthur Motley on the week after, and Arthur was speaking about, and we've talked about it really recently actually, and saying about how he said tasting notes never really were a thing up until like the 90s. And it backs it up where they said you've got blending documents from the old grocers that go all the way back, and even up to like
the only
80s.
tasting note was add sherry.
Yeah, you got for colour.
Sorry.
It's all. I mean, it's like what you're looking at. So you're saying, what was it? 12 different distilleries, but 9 would
nine actual distilleries. So 9, if you like, casks for at the size I was doing it. But a pool of 16 different distilleries.
16, right. So knowing, again, then it comes back to what Craig Johnson was talking about, how actually for the blending, it's not really about the flavour in the cask, it's about the distillery character. Yeah. That you're getting, because the distillery character, and I've said it 100 times now, and I still think about it, and it's a great wee bit, is like the Highland, you said Highland Park was brilliant to blend with if you had it. Because it's one of the few spirits in the whole of Scotland that hit the front and back of your tongue at the same time. But he said, but it was a nightmare if you didn't have it because you needed to get 2 separate distilleries to be able to hit that same thing. Yeah. So, was that what it was like in those documents where you're in the back of that book?
That's exactly what it is, and exactly what they were doing, and what all licensed grocer shops were doing in the time. It's like, and of course they all wanted to have their, everybody's blend was different. Yeah. And it was it was about, well, this is the Tweedale blend from this area, but the whiskies were from all around Scotland. Yeah. And I think that whole thing about distillery character is really important, and it's really important when it came to being given a blank sheet of distillery, a blank sheet paper to design a distillery, is that we didn't have to have a distillery character because we weren't ever going to supply blenders. So, designing Raasay, we've been able to design the liquid, the process, the oak policy, literally was a blank sheet of paper because we didn't have to have. There's never been a distillery never been a legal distillery in Raasay before, so we didn't have to have a Raasay character. So it's an interesting twist on exactly the same thing. Because when you're blending, you have to, if you're supplying the blending market, you have to have a distillery character because it's so reliant on. And when I was going through that book and that pool of 16, the reason I could put them into different groups and see what my great grandfather was doing, because they had this, you knew what their distillery character was.
And that, I suppose, back then, cask quality would have been so varied. So that a good, strong distillery, like Scott's then said it on the Big Birthday Bash when he produced the oak whiskey and refill bourbon, and he's like, you'll never, like, this is where you'll find whiskey matured at its almost purest form, where you'll say that it's not going to be, nothing can hide in a refill bourbon cask.
But then I guess was it prior to 1914, how long were you spending time in that cask as well?
Exactly.
So if you didn't have good character, you were just drinking firewater.
Exactly, So having, getting that opportunity as a blend back in those days, fascinating. And then, so at this point you said you like to dram, but you're working in cheese. How on earth do you start then deciding distilling? Well,
how do you start designing a distillery?
How do you design a distillery? That's a brilliant question, because
like creaminess, or is it?
Well, it's almost that, exactly that. So so say obviously, we had basically given a blank sheet of paper, so we could have made anything we wanted to make, but we're on the Hebridean island, off another Hebridean island. So we're an island off an island in the Hebrides. So the first question would be, well, what is you going to make? Well, we want to make a Hebridean whiskey. And then you go, well, what's a Hebridean whiskey? And at the time, you had Talisker, Tobermory and Jura, and that was about it. Sure. Right? And they're not that similar. But the bit of that I was thinking that came to my mind was this lightly peated. So not heavily peated, not Isle peat, a lightly peated element. And then it was like, but what else? So you've got lightly peated, but that's in itself not enough. And about that time, so this is, if you think about it, this is 2014, 2015.
Sure.
There was a lot of chat about Bowmore, and how the character changed in 70s and 80s, and how it had all this dark fruit character, and then they changed the process and all this. And I was thinking, dark fruit's really interesting, because when we talk about fruit flavours in whiskey, we tend to talk about apples, pears, maybe banana, maybe some tropical fruit, but very rarely do you go, oh yeah, it's a dark fruit character, there's black currants there or whatever. So that was the kind of, in very crude terms, like, we're going to make a lightly peated single malt with dark fruits. Okay. But then the big hurdle was, I knew we were going to release it at 3, 4, 5 years old. Right? So that's where how do you make an excellent whiskey at 3, 4, 5 years old? So to answer that question, to me, what is an excellent whiskey? An excellent whiskey has complexity, depth and balance. So how do we create complexity, depth and balance? And to me, that was like, we needed to design a distillery that could make lots of different types of newmake spirit. Because by making lots of different types of newmake spirit, we can build up complexity. So again, in basic terms, we do 6 months of plain malty barley and 6 months of peated malty barley. So there's 2 newmake spirits, and they're matured separately. Okay. And then you bring the oak policy into that. So we use ex-rye cask, Chinkabin oak, and ex-Bordeaux red wine. So there's 3 cask types, 2 spirit types. So essentially, we've got 6 different cask types at the end of it. But then you start thinking about, well, what in the process can we have off or on So we've got cooling jackets on the washbacks, stainless steel washbacks, because I came from the dairy industry and I like to clean stuff. Stainless steel washbacks with cooling jackets, which means we have a bit of control over the fermentation temperature. Now that's important because the higher the fermentation temperature, the more fusel oils produced. The more fusel oils, the higher alcohols. You get more viscosity, more mouthfeel.
And your fermentation time's like kind of 90 hours?
So we're 3 days and 5 day fermentation.
Oh right, okay.
So
5 days, really long time as well.
Yeah, and again, so by having 2 different fermentation times, you get 2 different types of wash before it goes into the still. So the temperature is a big factor in that, as I say. So if we're on plain malt, we tend to stop the fermentation somewhere between 30 and 32. If we're on peated, we let it go as high as it wants. So we're trying to build more viscosity, with more fusel oils, more higher alcohols, more of that mouthfeel. And that's in the wash. And then 3 day fermentations at 70 hours, at 48 hours, you've got all the alcohol you're ever going to get. At 3 days, 70 hours, the yeast dies off. The cells burst open, a process called lysis, that creates this buttery, oily mouthfeel. So that again builds up complexity, and then you're thinking, well, why are you still fermenting if the yeast's all died off? Well, we get into lactobacillus development. So lactobacillus, again, very common in the dairy industry, but comes in naturally on the malted barley. And when the yeast dies off, the lactobacillus start to grow. So the lactobacillus produce lactic acid. Lactic acid lowers the pH. So the lower the pH, the better the interaction with copper in the wash still. It's a catalytic reaction that works better at a lower pH. That lactic acid also reacts with the esters that the yeast produce, so you get longer chained esters, which lean more towards those dark fruit flavours that we're looking for.
Wow.
So by having temperature cold, 3 days and 5 day fermentations.
Chuck's getting excited here.
Can I just say, when you're trying to get this like 2 days into the job before a staff training, it's quite hard.
I remember showing Gregor and Lucy round the distillery. I think it's day 2, day 1, can't remember. And I'm like, well, this is what we like. It's like.
Did you work in production of cheese?
Well, I was going to say, did you do any professional courses in distilling, or is this all self-taught? And is there stuff, like Graeme was saying, is there stuff you've learned from the cheese industry that you've taken?
Yeah, so at this point I always confess I did a degree in botany at Glasgow University, so technically I'm a botanist, so things like oak species, barley variety, yeast strains, all that kind of biochemistry side of stuff, I just love.
Right.
And I guess...
You wouldn't be able to tell.
Well, really? Oh, no.
No, I mean, because hearing you speak there, you're going, bloody, like, I'm trying to keep up with what you're saying about all that. And there'll be people who watch this that are absolutely, like, they'll go bananas for hearing about that, because that's for the whiskey geek side of things, like, geeking out on new strains and everything, it's fantastic. But I'm trying to picture it in my head going...
Which is why we brought that, actually, because that's 100% champagne use of that, man.
Is it? Well, we'll need it. But
come on to that in a minute.
But just hearing you speak, I'm trying to work out, like, how can you go for... Because it'd be so easy, very, very easy to go, right, I like the idea of starting a distillery, and I've got somebody who's going to back us, and we can get this distillery built, we found this area, and we're going to co-found it together, but also go... And there's plenty of distilleries who have done it. They just go find a guy who is an expert on that side of the business and get them in. And who is it that we called? It was the Pep Guardiola of this. Oh, it's the guy not Tamdu. I can't remember anyway. But basically, we're sort of saying, get them in and get somebody who could do that. And even things like Paul Main said about Ardnahoe, and he said, you go in, when you're building a distillery for the very first time, you can literally manipulate and manufacture how flavour will be, like you've just said, through understanding what your distillation, what your fermentation times will be, and things like that. But also, copper bends. Just suddenly going.
Well, I haven't spoken about stills yet.
Yeah, but so like from your point of view, you're obviously got a passion in this, because you did say before, maybe modestly now looking back, going, I like to dram, but I mean, were you geeking out on whiskey before you started even getting into this level of it? Were you sitting there, because bear in mind, early to mid 2000s, 2010, up to that point, I don't know if there would have been as much information about yeast strains and fermentation times as there is now.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to...
No,
answer your question. Well, I was going to say, it also seems like you've gone in to a blending process and you've kind of picked that hat up and then gone into opening a distillery and kind of almost gone in with the same business mindset with the new make. Yeah. We have to have a variation. Yeah. And in a market at the time, 2014, well, you guys started production in 2017. Yeah. There was quite a lot of new kids on the block who were starting to release stuff. I mean, Kilcoman were obviously doing, well, they've been on the go for a few years. So to come out and be like, well, we'll do it 6 months of unpeated, 6 months of peated, and then do very strict cask maturations, see how this liquid... It's a pretty ballsy move.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought about it like that, to be honest. It was just my thought process was, and I guess it is because I started blending first. Right. And that was my thought process. And I knew we were going to release long whiskey. So I'm like, how are we going to create, like in a blend, complexity, depth, balance, right? Yeah. How are we going to create that from one distillery? Yeah. And it was by not having a distillery character. I mean, we do have a distillery character, but thinking, well, let's not do that. So we talked about the fermentation, talked about the cooling jackets. On the wash still, we've got a cooling jacket on the line arm, and we can get into all of that stuff. So, but basically, it was about. So it's about having different things that can be off or on, and when they're on, they do one thing. When they're off, they're not doing that. So we've got that on the washbacks. We've got that on this wash still. We've got that on the spirit still.
And what does a cooling jacket do when it's on?
So this is the counterintuitive bit, because as soon as I start describing this, everyone goes, "Oh, it's a purifier," and it's like, well, hold on a minute. So on the wash still, you don't take a cut. We run right down to water. Okay. So if you hold that thought, we've got a slightly declined line arm. So obviously, the steeper the decline line, the heavier the spirit is. Yeah. Generally speaking, the more inclined it is, the lighter it is, because you get more reflux and natural cooling. So we put a cooling jacket on the line arm. So basically, what that does is it takes that slight decline into a much steeper decline, because basically you're condensing the vapours early. Okay. But that's always on. Right. But we've got a hand valve, so immediately after the cooling jacket, there's a collection pot. And it's a stainless steel pipe, brings it back down into the pot still, but only if the valve's open. So it's a hand valve, open or closed, right? So if it's closed, it's that. Yeah. Right? If you open it, all the heavy vapours are going back into the pot.
For completely new distillation.
So only the lighter stuff ends up going...
Until the end of the wash still run, when you're just about in water and all these heavier compounds that you've just built up come over right at the end. So we get a much heavier, more viscous, low wines with the hand valve open.
That sounds awesome. I don't think I fully understand.
No.
It's people are pulling over their cars right now. Hang on a minute. What you need is a pen and a bit of paper for this.
So the only way to truly understand it is taste the new make with the valve shut and the valve open.
Really? And how common is that in the whiskey industry, or at least in the Scotch whiskey industry?
It's not totally uncommon. I don't think anyone's got it the way we've got it. But if you think of Fettercairn and the shower that runs down the neck, and I think Dalmore have got in their flat stills. I think they've got some condensation in the neck of the still. So it's not totally uncommon. It's just the way what we're trying to do is just like simple things like that. A valve that's open or closed. So we get different low wines.
Yeah.
Right.
And then on the wash still, you look at the wash still. It's a swan neck wash still, a slightly inclined line arm. You're thinking that's going to produce a fairly light kind of spirit, because then before it gets the condenser, there's two valves. I won't talk about the first one yet, because that's a different spirit altogether. But if you open the second valve before it gets the condenser, it converts it through, which is a purifier. It's a little column with 6 copper bubble cap plates on it, and a deflag on the top, so cold spirit coming in the top, and it comes up. So if you took that and put it where the swan neck is, that'd be a carter head still. Okay. So we can change from having a swan neck to a carter neck by opening a valve. So we've only got 2 stills, but we can open and close it. So that then gets you, so off the swan neck would be about 70% ABV roughly. Yeah. By opening that valve and running through the purifier, you get to 80% on one pass. Wow. Much lighter, much more focused than that black currant note. So So if you take those three things that can be off or on, you've got all the combinations of them being off or on, then you've got peated and unpeated. So you're probably about 6 to 9 different types of newmake spirit.
And then your cask,
and then your oak polish. Then
and before that, you've also got the different yeasts.
And then you've got
all these variables you can do. You know, and each one you add adds another. Doubles it basically.
Yeah.
So
what's the production size for us?
So we're a 1 ton mash.
Okay.
So our biggest year was last year, and we did just over 220,000 litres of pure alcohol.
Right. Okay.
That was 2 shifts, 6 days a week. So,
wow. Okay. So it's
tiny.
It's tiny in the grand scheme of things, but it's to have that much of a variety as well is insane.
And you're storing everything on the island.
Everything's matured on Raasay. We've got 2 warehouses currently. We've got a palletised warehouse and a dunnage warehouse. And I think the oak policy is the next bit that really leans into that.
Yeah.
So again, I guess from 2012 to 2015, when I was kind of putting all this together, I was getting really frustrated with people saying bourbon and people saying sherry. And I'm thinking, I'm a botanist, right? It's like, it doesn't cut it. Like, I need to know more. So I made the decision not to go bourbon cask. It is Quercus alba, but so it's not.
I was going to say you're going to be somebody who refers to the Latin names of the.
Absolutely.
This is
North American white oak.
Yeah.
So most bourbon casks are made from Quercus alba. But X-rye. So there's 2 reasons we went X-rye cask instead of bourbon. One is rye brings this really black peppery spice note. So you've got all the vanilla and butterscotch from the Quercus alba, but then you've got this extra layer, this extra complexity of the peppery spice from the rye. And then we use Chinkapin oak casks, so these are fresh casks, never had anything in them before.
And Chinkapin comes from the States.
North American white oak, Quercus Muhlenbergi, not Quercus alba.
So a different variety.
Different variety.
Tasting.
But this is the one that's kind of.
Quercus Muhlenbergi sounds like a really weird cousin.
This is the kind of Ozark region of America, isn't it?
So it's all of the same forests. That
Okay.
Quercus alba grow in. In fact,
Yeah.
for a long time, I don't think everyone.
All right,
ever
so it's not
separated
different
them.
parts of America. It's
Not in this case. No,
not
Gariana, Quercus Gariana, which is over in the kind of Washington, Oregon.
All right. Okay.
Yep.
So, that's a different growth,
species
but
altogether.
Quercus alba, Quercus Muhlenbergi grow in the same part, but we're probably never segregated. So the bourbon casks and whiskey casks out there, we've got both species in them, but what I guess the issue was, again at that time, everyone was like, "Oh, you can't use virgin oak for Scotch whisky; it's going to overpower the spirit." And I'm like, but we need something that's real. We need a really active cask. We need something that's getting back to this 3, 4, 5-year-old. We need something that's going to bring a lot, but just being really, really recognising that we don't want it to overpower the spirit, and that's really where Chinkapin, the Quercus Muhlenbergi, comes in, because it doesn't overpower it in the way that to me it brings more richness.
Yeah.
There's a lot more richness to the cask, and then this is the way we specify the casks are made. So we ask for 36 months, 3 years air drying of the timber before they make the cask.
Right. Yeah.
So the longer the air drying, the more the lignin breaks down. So lignins in all plant cells makes plants strong. When lignin breaks down, it turns into volatile phenols. So by having a longer air drying period, it's further down that route of breaking the lignins down. And then we use a very high toast. Now, most people are like, "Oh, you don't use a high toast, it's always a medium toast." The longer you do the toast, the more the lignins break down as well. So as well as caramelising the natural sugars in the oak, the semi-hellulose, and getting that caramel flavour, you're breaking the lignins down into volatile phenols. Now, that's important in years to come, because as the phenolic, the phenols from the peated barley degrade, we start to get them back from the cask.
So you're getting okay.
And then a very high char, the high char obviously increases the surface area of the cask, but the charcoal itself removes the impurities, which are again for a young whisky. So those Chinkapin oak casks and that specification, so the oak species and how the casks are made to our specification are hugely important in our recipe.
I mean, Gregor, how difficult from your point of view then? Because this is what, like, Chuck said it as well. There's a lot of the new kids on the block, so to speak, were happening around about this time. And I suppose what you don't have in terms of the history and the stories to fall back on, you have to come up with marketing, and you have to be able, and liquid to lips, or as we like to say, pieces of liquid in people's mouths on the podcast. I mean, I make no apologies for it on the whether we do have guesses. I've known Raasay, and I've seen Raasay everywhere. I've tried it a few times. I know, but I know very, very little about Raasay itself. But then when you hear Alasdair talking, and I'm going, I'm just desperate to get finished what I've got in my glass now, so I could try that and go, now I totally get it. But at the same time, is that a challenge, or has it been easy to get that marketing out to people? Because once you hear somebody explain it like what you've just said, you can instantly go, right, now I need to try that and just see if I can do I get the blackcurrant or the dark fruits flavours, and can I understand this is why it works like that?
Yeah. No, I think. Well, yeah, you're right in saying there's a lot of new kids on the block, and I think the way that a lot of my time has been taken up is telling people, how we're different, what we're doing that's different. We don't have hundreds of year history. We've only got 7-year history, so it doesn't take that long to go through it. But what can we do that's different? And it's in our corporate speech, stand out from the crowd. What can we actually do to do that? And so, firstly, when you tell people about the island and where it is, island population of 161, and really tell people that we do everything there, and it's not the easiest way of doing something, but something I always say in tastings, or if I'm telling people, is if something's worth doing, do it right kind of thing, or do it the way you want to do it. And so people really come on board with that, and then it takes a bit of an explanation. It's a difficult, not difficult, but it's not the easiest way you could produce a whiskey or a young whiskey. Logistically, financially, every way, it's not the easiest way. But once you have 2 minutes, 3 minutes to explain to someone the spirits that we can produce, the cask program that we do, why we do it the way we do it, people really come round to it, and it's been really successful.
And what's the population of Raasay?
161.
161.
Well,
so
as per the last census.
I would assume you're now probably, which is what's remarkable, is obviously before 2013 weren't there. Now I would assume you're probably the biggest employer on the island. I may be wrong.
No, by far.
Single employer.
Far,
So I mean,
over 40 people.
We've spoken a lot.
It's about 50% of the working population.
We've spoken. It's very reminiscent of when we've had Isle of Raasay on, and they've spoken a lot about the amount. About the amount of kind of native islanders that they employ in the distillery. Is that something you're very focused on yourself?
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, out of necessity, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the island population is just under 200 now. We employ 40 people at the distillery. Some of those are seasonal, obviously. But that's because we do everything on Raasay. We've got our own well on site. We use that water for everything. We use it for cooling, we use it for mashing, we use it for fermentation. Most importantly, we use it for cask reduction, we use it for bottling. So although we distill it out, we're adding it back in. So the fact and that's why the bottle looks like this, because we're trying to talk about the geology of the island and how the geology influences the water from our well.
So I feel like I would be remiss not to mention a guy I work with at my current job. He used to work for Nesbitt's, and I think during COVID he was delivering casks to you up to Raasay, and he said it was great unless you missed the ferry.
Yes,
and that was like, you had to wait 24 hours.
Really?
Yeah, so it's like once a day, is it?
No. We've got the ferries. The ferries takes
COVID
25 minutes.
Right.
COVID was very different.
Right. Okay.
It ferries 25 minutes from Sconser to Raasay,
Right.
and it runs pretty much every hour.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's not bad.
Stops for lunch, obviously. But
One question I wanted to ask you is, you talked about the importance of creating a very good young spirit, about creating something that in 3 years, 5 years time tastes very good. But you mentioned your fellow founder.
Yes, Bill.
And this is something he wanted in his family. There's obviously longer term ambitions there. So what have you changed? How your production with an eye as time goes on, with an eye to 20 years, 30 years down the line, and what might come out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, because obviously, as soon as I start talking about we're going to produce 3 or 5 year old whiskey, and we talk about 6 cask recipe, so Nicaea and Gaelic, people are like, oh right, and eventually, people get it, but then immediately go, also, so how are you going to have a 10, 15 old whiskey? Well, yeah,
I'd say that's one of the most popular questions we get asked.
It's like, so the great thing about having a recipe, and the other great thing is that we refill casks. You know, so like we've been bottling whiskies since November 2020. So we've been bottling whiskey for 5 years, which means we've been emptying casks for 5 years, which means we've been refilling for casks for 5 years, which means that we have.
If you're buying virgin oak casks, you know that's maybe got several lifetimes of whiskey in it.
So we've got these fresh casks that we then refill. So technically they're a first fill.
Yeah.
And then we've got the ex-rye and the ex-Bordeaux red wine casks that we refill that are second fill, but they've only had spirit in them for 3, 4, 5 years.
That's fantastic. I just have to say, this is the first unpeated Raasay that I've ever had.
Yeah. So what are we having here? This is
one of my favourites, I think, ever.
As we've just said, it's just our unpeated spirit.
Yeah.
But it was fermented with 100% champagne yeast.
Wow.
And it was matured in, I think, Four Roses bourbon cask. So not rye cask, bourbon cask. So the champagne yeast does exactly what you expect. You get all these kind of biscuity, malty things from that, but you kind of get an effervescence as well. There's kind of this weird kind of, it's not fizz, but it's got that flavor that the champagne brings, and then you've got the vanilla butterscotch Quercus Alba.
That's that's absolutely.
And it's also the oldest thing we've bottled at 7 years old.
Yeah. Another question I had, you mentioned there's no legal history of distilling on Raasay.
No legal, yeah.
Do you have any knowledge of the illegal stuff that was going on? I mean, just for anecdotally, I read a book, something my dad picked up in a second hand, and it was about a teacher, and he'd gone up to South Uist in the kind of 1880s, and then illegal distilling was happening in every household. You know, I take it Raasay was no different.
There's some great stories on the island, and there's one particular place. So if you go south of the distillery, past the old iron ore mine and the old pier, down to Ayr, and then you follow the burn up through the woods. There's a little clearing, and there's a kind of stone ruin, and you can see where the burn was diverted to this stone ruin, and there's a kind of, and you can virtually see where the pot still sat and where it would have been condensed in the woods.
in the woods.
And there's another story at the north end of the island that someone actually diverted the burn through his house to condense the spirit. And the other part of that story is that the families and relatives on Skye always hung just whitewashing out when the excise man was coming.
Oh, really? So they were all in on it.
So you went to this guy who diverted his still through his house, went and hid his still.
See the whitewashing on the washing line,
so
and go, right,
grabs his still,
everything,
goes, hides it in the bog, never found it again. There's still a still out there somewhere.
Brilliant. I mean, there's some fantastic. Is it difficult going into a community like that with this idea? Because, you know, for a population that size, and dare I say it without being showing any disrespect to the locals of Raasay, but was there any kickback? Was there anyone saying this isn't going to be good for the island because we don't want this kind of thing happening here?
I remember myself and the architect Ollie, we were like at that point where we were going to go and start speaking to planning and all the rest of it. So we had the plans at a fairly developed point, and Ollie was living on the island at the time, and he said, what do you think about calling a island meeting in the community hall and you stand up and present? And I'm like, really? But it was great. It was fantastic. We stood up and the reception was great. Some really good questions. Just obvious things that people wanted to know. And at the end, I remember like people coming up. You didn't want to ask questions, but they come up at the end. And really, the kind of summary of that was the older generation going, "This is fantastic. If you can bring young people back to the island, if you can bring young people to the island, if you can start families, if we can have more people in the primary school, if we can have other people who then start businesses off the back of this, that's why we will support this project." And this is before we'd even gone to planning. And what's, I guess, pleasing now is being in a position where we employ 40 people. Yeah. We've brought people back to the island. We've got people to the island. There are now more people in the primary school.
Yeah.
Slowly will be in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Enough said.
Get to work.
So, it's just nice.
Boys, though. There's no girls.
There's been one girl.
One girl.
Callum
Oh,
Gillis
Callum,
had a
yeah,
wee girl,
Callum.
first girl for
17 years.
17
First
years.
The
girl,
first
17
girl
years.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
These are the kind
But of
of
course, when you
Yeah.
mention all
Here
the
goes my fun fact. For
There you go.
when you're talking about all the benefits, one of the benefits we know about the Scotch whisky industry is there's a tourism angle to it.
Yeah.
So you've not only been able to bring jobs to the island, you've been able to bring visitors to the
Yeah,
island
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
And we know, you talked about the derelict hotel that was
Yeah.
bought over. That now is a business attached to the distillery. Am I right in saying?
Yeah, so now
Um,
now it is, and we actually call it the island experience. It's a completely, it's about getting people to come and stay with us,
Yeah.
but it's getting people to go and see the island. and-
Because a friend of the show, Vicky Elliott, went up, I think about 6 months ago, she went
Yeah.
up and she stayed on the island and,
Yeah.
was following her socials at the time. And she looked like she had a fantastic time there. Absolutely beautiful.
Well, we
part of
had
the island
like
as well.
we had Stuart Dick from Torrevieja,
Yeah.
Aye.
and I sort of asked. I mean,
guy.
yeah, great,
Yeah.
honestly.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I asked him about, and this was fairly early on in the podcast. And what got me was we always talk about like the sharp elbows in the industry,
Yeah.
how there never seems to be it, and it isn't until you speak to the guys that are in the sales where they go, no, we're all very friendly until we get out of the pub and see the
exactly.
next one coming in, we'll let their tyres down. But I'm sure you don't do that.
No,
anyway.
never
But-
happens. Never
But
happens.
but
Not
what
Monday to Friday.
exactly. I asked. I said, surely, Torrevieja, Talisker having Sky wrapped up, and saying suddenly after all these years there's going to be another distillery on the island. And he's like, well, no, because now the island itself are delighted because instead of coming to Skye for one day and seeing one distillery, there's if we were going now, we would say, we're going to have to go to Skye, but we're going to have to maybe spend 2 days or a couple of days. And then he said, and with Raasay being so
I'll
close,
have to spend the night on
he
Raasay.
said now it's
Yeah.
like the 3 distilleries on that trail have certainly created a situation where
It's a
you
whiskey
can
destination.
spend to the 4 days
and
now.
that's what we want to be, and that hopefully that's what people want, because go all that way and see one distillery. I mean,
Yeah.
go and see 3.
I was up in Skye a couple of weeks ago. I went up with my dad, and unfortunately I didn't get to go to Raasay because we were only there for one night. So we drove up, and he, let me go see the 2 distillers. Didn't have time to tour anything. And then
So you
drove
just
back.
got to drive to the gates and you go, I'll
Got
keep
a
the car
picture
running.
outside.
Yeah, took a picture outside. No, he.
Jack, get back in the car.
Yeah, stop smelling those casks. Get back in the car, son. Just scooshing me with that. We went up and did kind of had a wee look around, and but we stayed the night in Portree, and met up with a bus tour, and it was like all these people that were doing a 3-day bus tour, a 4-day bus tour, and I think they were going up to Raasay. I think they were going to go to Mull as well, just kind of that whole surrounding area.
Yeah.
And people from down south, America, everything like that, all really, really pumped, and couldn't believe the scenery. Obviously.
Well, they say like here, they say as well, like, again, same thing, asking, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute actually, Ali Baxter, saying where the guys at Scotch Whisky Experience started to panic a little bit when the big Diageo came in and said we're going to put a brand home on Princess Street and make it the Johnny Walker Experience, and he was like, no, because what will happen is a tourist might arrive and say, oh, we'll do the Johnny Walker Experience, and go, I need to find out more about whiskey, what else can I do, and then they'll go to Scotch Whisky Experience. And he also mentioned about how SWE is effectively owned by the industry, so Diageo are big supporters of that. But that'll be the same as, again, there'll be people that maybe say, oh, we're going to Skye, we're in the area, and they go to Talisker and go, God, suddenly they just, people take that and go, is there more? I want more. And then there's Torrevieja and Raasay, and you go, well, they're on the trip anyway. So
Yeah, well, what I would say is something that's been growing over the last couple of years, going back to your point, is the Hebridean Whisky Trail, or Hebridean Whisky Festival has kind of started up over the last few years. More and more distilleries are joining it now, and we each have a day. And granted, it's not like Isle or Campbelltown where everything is pretty concentrated. You have to travel a bit, but there's a day on Jura, there's 2 days on Skye, day on Raasay, over to the Outer Hebrides, and you've got Harris, and I think there's South Uist in it as well.
North Uist in it.
North Uist in it as well. And there's opportunity for more people to join as well. There's a few other distilleries that can take days, and before you know it, you have this whole packaged tour that you
When
can
is
do.
that?
When is next year? September, I think.
Yeah.
September. We've got the final day next year, and we're planning quite a big knees up.
We'll start planning.
We did we did a festival bottling this year as well.
Yeah.
We'll do one next year.
wow,
So.
fantastic.
I've heard a few murmurs for next year. It sounds pretty good.
And going on to the bottling then, what I will say first of all, I mentioned him earlier there, Ali Baxter. 19th of March 2024, Ali Baxter is the first and only person. And by the way, that's not to say that's a great. He put Raasay inaugural down as his 3 drams.
Oh really?
It was
Fantastic.
number 2 of his 3 drams.
Good man.
And I've got a little point of order with Ali Baxter as well. As during the event, I was speaking to my brother-in-law Joseph, and he mentioned that he could actually see the Braes of Glenlivet Distillery from his bedroom window.
Well, there you go. So he can see.
So if anybody else can see a distillery from their bedroom window, do let us know.
Yeah, just distilleries, mind. Well, but
I can see Port Elise.
oh, there you go.
Well, it's quite prominent.
It's like right in front of
I
me.
mean, if you live in Kinghorn and Fife, you could probably see Port. But in terms of so we talked about you're going through the production side of it, right? And what I really like as well is it's not like unapologetically of like we need a whiskey out in 5 years, you know, because there's a lot of places, a lot of distilleries who open and say we've no plans to release anything.
No, it's ready when it's ready.
You know, that
and
kind
that's
of
an
stuff.
economic decision sometimes as much as it is a.
Yeah.
Well, 100%, but also just being upfront and open and going, we need to make money out of this because the next question I'll have for you is, and you don't have to say exactly, but the hole that a distillery can burn into your pocket can be quite substantial. You're employing all these people. I'll also say, like, the marketing, as I've mentioned to you before, even I remember being all the casks up at Bonnie and Wild for a while. Were all Raasay.
Still there.
Still there, yeah. So it's all cost.
Yeah.
It's all cost, but what it does do is it gets you to the forefront of people's eyes. Yeah. But you know that must have been an easy decision then. Just we need something out because we need to get money coming.
Yeah, I think it was always the plan to release it 3 years old and 4 and 5. It's always the plan, and my job was to design a whiskey that would be good enough at 3 years old. So you know, hopefully we've done that, and it was by doing all these different things. And you know, we're a brand new distillery. If you look at the building, it's a contemporary building, and we're kind of, you know, proud and honest about being a new distillery. And you know, I think now people are kind of more open to trying the whiskey and not so hung up on the age. And I think we've kind of got there. And I think the next thing is to demonstrate that this recipe is going to be like 10, 15. You know, it's designed to do that, and I think that's the important thing. It was designed to be like this. Yeah. But I think for us, it was important to make a whiskey that is ready to release at 3, 4, 5 years.
Because there's a challenge, I suppose, Gregor. You'll maybe see that is, you know, it's very easy when you're in a room. We've talked about this a lot now. It's very easy to be when you're in a room of like-minded people like ourselves who are whiskey enthusiasts. Where actually seeking out a new distillery is something that you want to do. But when you look at the general market of the whiskey drinker, there are still people to this day who will sit there and go, if it's under 10 years old, it'll be no good.
Absolutely.
I've seen the change in that from even when I first started in whiskey, not with Raasay, to now. There's been much more of an interest in, you know, not necessarily non-age statements, but like what makes this one different? You know, is it a different cask? Is it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of distilleries out there that are doing interesting things in order to be different. First thing that popped in my head there is Holyrood with all the different yeasts and all that sort of thing. And well, I've only been in whiskey about 4.5 years, before, so 3 years at Raasay and a year elsewhere, and I think the difference in that sort of even time frame has changed away from I'm not drinking this because it's under 12. And don't get me wrong, there's still people that say that's still quite young and all that sort of stuff. It's like, well, give it a try, see what you think.
I think if people are willing to
not everything
to taste whiskey, then that's the first step. And I did a tasting recently down in London. It was a whiskey dinner, and I was asked to pick 3 whiskies that the establishment had currently in their bar, and I presented 3 Raasays. So I mean, it was an opportunity for me. So we had.
Just so you know, you can't go 3 Raasays for your 3 drams today.
I'm not going to. And this isn't a Raasay. I'll tell you what this is in a minute.
Yeah.
But what was nice is like we put the dram against the 10-year-old Alasdair.
Yeah.
We had the Duncana, which is our sherry finished Raasay against a 15-year-old Dalmore, and then we had our made with 100% Arbiki barley with an Auchentoshan at the end. All much older whiskies, and well, I won't tell you the result, but you can guess.
Yeah. I'm going to ask from your point of view as a botanist then, because this is a question I've been thinking about recently. I remember there's an old story about Unilever having a problem with an issue with their powder systems.
Yeah.
And they got 2 separate people to come in. They got mathematicians to try and solve this problem out. And the mathematicians came up with this great thing that theoretically worked really well. But the problem was that they got all the sums, they got all the angles, they did all that, and it was to stop the powder from congealing when it was getting run through their system. But the problem was that despite all their work, and they spent hours and days, weeks, months, whatever it was, and then thousands of pounds changing this system, and it still didn't work. So then what they did is went to a bunch of biologists, and they said, I want you guys to come up with a process. And they did something like 185 prototypes until they got the exact right one. But then the thing is, the right one that worked, when they went back to the mathematicians and said, this is what works, the mathematicians said, it makes absolutely no sense because it shouldn't work like that. But the whole point of this was like the biologists go through evolution, whereas the mathematicians went to, here's the maths. Right. So what we've seen in history is there's 200 years of distilling and distilleries that have learnt from mistakes and learnt from things and prototypes and all the way up to where we are today, which is why we can have. So when you look at the heritage brands, like the big brands that we see, what do you think the mistakes could be or are going to be, or how are we learning as new distilleries? What kind of things are you going, right, because they're going to, at some point or other, there's going to be points where there's have to be pivots or changes made.
Yeah. So I think for me, I can only answer from a personal point of view, but for me, designing Raasay, it was like, well, first things first, Scotch whisky regulations, fully believe in them. I wouldn't have it any other. I think they're a great thing, and anyone says you can't innovate within them is just not working hard enough or thinking hard enough. So that's read, but then looked at what else was happening around the world. So if you looked at what happened in the United States with the craft distillers there, it's part of the reason we use rye casks, because they made rye very cool again. It was a very unloved thing. So that was a big learning from what the craft distillers had done there, is they take something that was very traditional, unpopular, and made it cool again. Right? So there's a big lesson in that. And then looked at some of the Japanese distilleries, and at that point Japanese was some of the most expensive and probably best whisky in the world. So if you want to take my view on it, they looked at Scotch whisky, made it better. So let's learn from what they did, and that whole thing about having lots of different newmake spirits, maturing them separately, that's a very Japanese philosophy. And then looking at places like
those guys doing like 3 or 5 different ppm distillations, and then all this kind of stuff.
So there's a big learning there, and then looking at places like Tasmania, didn't really have a history of distilling, but thanks to Bill Larkin and the likes, really from crazy, not crazy, but from very different principles. Yeah. You take all of that, bring it back to Scotland, and then hopefully, so it's a combination to me. It's a combination of actually embracing, enhancing the 200-year-old legal tradition that we've got of whisky, plus what was done before that. And it's great to see other new distilleries like Kai looking at, making whiskies from the 50s, 60s again. That's really fascinating. But for me, it was like, let's be a modern, contemporary, single malt Scotch whisky.
I suppose in a market like this, there should be enough space for both of those as well. There should be appreciation.
Well, there is
absolutely
for history and as well.
Plenty of space for everyone, I think.
Well, I mean that, and it's the only people that are really the people that really win are us, the consumer.
The consumer,
because we suddenly go brilliant, because you've got you look at the Thompson brothers, Phil and Simon, and you look at what they're doing, and they're saying like, let's look at traditional whiskey making, as you mentioned there.
Let's hark back to the 50s, 60s.
But do it sustainably. What they're looking at for their distillery, that sustainability is fantastic.
And then, like we spoke to Scott Snedden about it at the Big Birthday Bash, and it's like they internally look at it and go, let's look at old ways of doing things, but try and do it in a modern twist, a modern take with different things. And then you've got yourselves that are going like, let's just do it our way and do it, and there's no one can sit there and go, you're not doing it right, because you're making whiskey at the end of the day, and as long as if people can drink it, and let's say, as I say, I've not drank an awful lot of Raasay, but the ones that you've brought in with us. So the second one,
so
this
is lightly peated.
It's slightly, very, very lightly peated. I'll tell you why in a minute. But this is fully matured in ex-Marsala cask. Now, Marsala. Everyone immediately, when you say Marsala, everyone goes, "Oh,
Sicily,
it's a sweet Sicilian fortified wine." This is not. This is bone dry. This is Marsala Vigigni from Fazita. It's absolutely bone dry. It's oxidised as well, and they use the Solera system. So it's in the cask for a minimum of 5 years, sometimes 10, sometimes 30 years, so it's in oak, the Marsala itself.
So immediately I'm thinking expensive casks.
As Gregor said, it's not the easiest way to make whiskey.
But something's worth doing.
Yeah, something's worth doing.
And going back to the population, you print the island population on the bottle numbers as well.
Yeah.
So
we're waiting for the next census, and
2031
can't come soon enough.
I think now.
It's
but it's not the official census.
184 in 2022. So it may change.
So where are babies on Raasay born? Are they born on the island?
Well, mate, if you don't know now.
Inverness.
No, so the nearest hospital is Rigmore.
So you're sitting there. You could be sitting there and getting ready to get the labels off the print, because I'd imagine that the thing that people forget is that we did a handfill bottling at the Mass at the Big Birthday Bash, and people were able to stick their labels on there and then. Yeah. But when you're looking at some of the outturns that you guys will be doing, I mean, how far ahead are you looking for? You're on the sales point, so
like 6 months.
6 months.
Probably the year. To be honest, we sit down. Every January we go up to Raasay as a big team, and we stay there for 2 days, and we sit in the boardroom on Raasay for 2 days and plan everything for the year.
Right.
And we try and stick to that best we can, just like every other distillery will be able to. But like everything takes like a week and a half labels wise to get to Raasay. Then we have to do our own bit to bottle it, get it ready to go, and then most of the time shipments will head from Raasay over to Portree, spend a day in Portree because for some reason that's what they have to do, and then from there they will go to wherever they.
So if a female islander is sitting there 8 months and
helicopter job,
how many days pregnant, are you guys on the phone going, like, she's either got to cross her legs now or she's got to get this thing out, otherwise it's not going to be in the label?
This wasn't in the 6 month plan.
So we basically based on it's always going to be based on the census. Because we can't. It's just not practical to go. Oh, there's another baby girl. So it's 161 at the minute. It will change at some point, and
when we run out of labels.
At some point in the at some point in the future, it'll be able to be 184.
It harks back to like feeling like part of the island community.
Well, that's the point is that we thought that was
it takes
something.
2 seconds to do that. I joined in 2022. I was up there for less than 5 minutes, and I was like, wow, this is the most amazing place ever.
And the thing is, it is about the harsh reality is that we're a relatively new distillery, relatively new brand. We have to stand out. So we can stand out about telling you about the Raasay, and whether that's the population or the geology or the water, and the bottle looks like that because it literally is the geology of Raasay. So the designers sent modelling clay up to Raasay and said, go and they spent 3 days on Raasay, myself and Bill and the team, and heard everything that everyone had to say about the stories and all the rest of it. They sent us modelling clay. There's one particular rock that we really liked that had this kind of purple running through it. And they go and push the modelling clay into that rock. Like, all right, okay. Push the modelling into that rock. And then they said, remember on the east coast of the island, the beach just at Hallaig below Duncana, there's fossils on the beach, go get some of those fossils. So these are the fossils from the beach on the east coast. And they pushed it in and then they made the bottle mould out of the.
So that's a mould directly from.
That's a fossil Raasay.
Yeah.
So there was some Ammonite 350 million years ago that didn't realise it was going to.
66 million
or
years
66
ago.
million years ago didn't realise it was going to appear on.
And the thing is, you talk about the purple. It's interesting because as soon as you said like I'm thinking about your branding.
Yeah.
I think about branding quite a lot because I am not.
You see the purple with the gold. Right?
Yeah. Well,
That's
I'm
what
not.
that looks like.
I'm not a. I'm the marketer's dream, right?
Yeah.
So
Impressionable.
I'm very impressionable. I am. And it's funny because I've looked at your branding for a lot. Because I'll be honest, I would say like from, I don't know, for the last 2 or 3 years, I mean like they're a new distillery, but they're pushing out all the time, so you're being seen.
Good to hear. That's
And
good to hear.
it's important because, like you say, there's so many other whiskies on the shelf. So first of all, bottle side, bottle type, bottle this, that, and this thing. But it's interesting because I always think the purple side of the element. And when you said dark fruits, I instantly went, that's probably why they have that colour on the bottle. No, genuinely, because
it's got nothing to do with Bill being a Hearts fan either. So.
No, well, there you go, a different story altogether. But I must say, like that, you have to stand out. Aye.
That's our number one. Like that's the easiest part of the sales job. It's telling them about the bottle.
And the reason it looks like the geology is because we've got our own well on site, and where the distillery is built on Jurassic sandstone, which happens, thank goodness, to be a porous rock. So we're sat on top of a big sponge, but everything around us is volcanic rock, it's granite or basalt. So obviously it rains a lot in Raasay, water runs off all the volcanic rocks,
just gets
ends up underneath the distillery. So.
But your Tweeddale,
aye,
that's just a standard tall round, is it not? Pretty boring if you ask me.
It may look like a standard tall round, but for those that is really keen eyesight, that it's slightly tapered. It's got the RB in the neck. It was actually a mould that Diageo were no longer using that we were able to.
Oh, so you were able to go to Diageo?
We were able to buy and modify.
Yeah.
To make an R&B bottle.
Wow. And so when you go back to it, so I'm assuming when you were blending Tweeddale then.
So this isn't actually the Tweeddale blend. The reason
that's got single grain on it.
This is a single grain, and as far as I am aware,
peated single grain.
This is the first ever peated single grain bottled.
Good Lord.
So this is from Loch Lomond Distillery.
Right.
Yeah. And I think they were very kind, and they allowed us to bottle this first. Is one way of looking at it. The other was they just wanted to see if it would fly before they bottled their own.
Let somebody else make
so they obviously Loch Lomond and I bottled their own peated single grain. This is their peated single grain, but I was just absolutely I mean, Loch Lomond's an amazing distillery. The different. I mean, I talk about the flexibility in stills we've got. When you look at Loch Lomond stills and what they can do, from everything from Lomond stills to column stills to pot stills, and the fact they were doing malted barley on column stills, I just thought.
And a copper-plated column still as well, which is just like awesome.
So this was the first ever peated single grain whiskey, Scotch whiskey to be bottled, and it's well worth trying. It's very different.
Well, I mean, how common is peated grain spirit? It must be like hen's teeth. I mean, even historically, going back years. I mean,
well, how far back do you go? If you go back far enough,
you will find
everything in Scotland was made from a mash bill.
Yeah.
So, if you think about the two grains that grow best in Scotland, oats and barley.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, rye. Not really wheat.
No.
So way back in your illicit distilling days and before that, it was whatever the harvest was. So the barley, the oats, the rye, the wheat.
It would all just get chucked in together.
So the Irish and the Scots had mash bills.
Yeah.
And when the Highland clearances happened and the potato famine and everyone emigrated around the world, they took the mash bill with them. And now in the States, everybody knows about a mash bill because bourbons and rye are made to a mash bill. And we've gone completely the other way and just gone, there's only one grain that can make whiskey. So for me, this is where it gets a bit more interesting, and I'd love to.
Funny story about this one in particular. So my first job in the whiskey industry was at SWE,
All right, so you're at Scotch Whisky Experience, were you?
Yeah.
Another one, eh? Another one to add to the list, Angus.
Another graduate.
I was going to shy away from this story because I feel like you've had about 40 million.
No, we love it.
No.
But for some reason I remember it. My first day or week at SWE, there must have been an R&B delivery because I was in the shop, early morning in the shop. Everyone helps with deliveries and you pack away whatever arrives that day, and there must have been an R&B delivery because I packed away about 1 million bottles of this and 1 million bottles of Raasay while we wait. And I was looking at Raasay being like, never heard of this place in my life. Like, what's this? Bearing in mind I'd never worked in whiskey before, so I was still quite new to it. But I always remember this, going back to the bottle and how unique and different it is compared to everything else.
What's R&B then?
So R&B came from Bill and I's initial discussions. So when the company was incorporated, it was actually incorporated as Canny Distillers. And then we very quickly thought, what are we really going to call it? And so obviously Bill was talking about Raasay, and my family heritage is Coldstream and the Borders. Right. So R&B is Raasay and Borders.
Brilliant.
So my heritage, Bill's vision of Raasay. It's nothing to do with Robertson and Baxter. It's just nice to be R&B.
So Gregor, what was your job at Scotch Whisky Experience then? Were you?
I was a tour guide. I started in it's a bit of a funny story with how I started. So I was studying at Napier University and I was doing tourism and airline management was my course, and I was going on to graduate in 2020, so terrible time to graduate into tourism. But as part of a course I had to do a placement within the field of, I guess, tourism or something. And so I had a friend who was working there at the time, and she was like, well, why don't you do this? And so I just applied on the basis of, it's a job in tourism, it gives me something to write this report about. Literally nothing to do with whiskey.
Airlines.
Or airlines. No, nothing. There's not many planes there. And so I started, and on my first day I met Cody. Cody's one of my good pals. And so he was one of the first people I met in the whiskey industry. And so worked there for 22 days, and then lockdown happened. And
wow.
Yeah, I didn't. And at the time I was on furlough for ages, and people were, unfortunately, later down the line had to be let go, and so I was one of these people, because I was I'd only worked there 22 days. I couldn't do anything. And then, but within those 22 days, I really fell in love with the Scotch whisky industry. I found it really interesting. I found the history of it fascinating, and shamefully, being from East Lothian, I've not really seen much of Scotland, so I thought, wow, what a great way to go around.
Who needs to see the rest of Scotland when you're from East Lothian?
Yeah, I know. You live in Haddington. There's like not much to see else. You know, you've seen it all.
It's a medium-sized swimming pool.
Yeah, there's an alright swimming pool.
So you're from Haddington, are you?
Yeah, I'm from Haddington. Yeah.
Oh, you're right. Not everyone else is outnumbered by people from.
Are you from Haddington?
Chuck and I both grew up in Haddington.
Are you from Haddington as well?
Yeah.
You go to Knox?
I didn't know.
Do you go
no, I didn't.
No.
When at Gifford.
Oh, you're not really from
Haddington. Yeah, I went to Yester as well. So.
Oh, really?
I'm a big fan of the Gardener's Arms, or what was the Gardener's Arms?
It's no longer.
Closed there. Angus and I had a couple of...
The Tweedale Arms wasn't too far away.
Tweedale, that's where my mum and dad met.
Really?
Yeah.
The Tweedale Arms?
Yeah. My granny's...
Lord.
This has just become a very localised podcast.
Well, I was gonna say that. It was when my great granny had her funeral and all that. You know, the way we're getting very local here.
Have you ever had a bottle of...
I never realised you went to Yester, Chuck.
Have you ever had...
Let's not go down this rabbit hole further.
No. I genuinely didn't realise that.
No, I tell you what though, because I heard you talking about it.
What, Haddington House?
There's at SWE, there is a bottle of Haddington House in the
collection.
Yes,
there is. We've seen it.
Every time I go in on a tour, I'm quite sad I calculated one day. I think I've done about 900 tours. And every time I would go...
22 days?
No. I've
never even... He was on the overtime.
I forgot, I've not even gone back to the first part of that story. Every time I would go in, I would look at that bottle of Haddington House.
Yeah.
Is that actually a house from Haddington?
Well, technically, there is one on the side gate that is
on
called...
Sidegate? I thought it was the one on the
That is Haddington House, the big white one. You know the one with... What's it called? Like lady.
You've been listening to Haddington
I know.
Story.
I don't know how that name got, because it's got kind of like a stag on the front, and
I'll tell you why. It's probably because Harrington is the capital of East Lothian.
It is, yeah.
Someone from Japan will look to that and be like, that must be a respectable time.
So another bottle in the Sweet collection is a bottle of Strathfillan, and it's the recipes of my great grandfather.
Really?
That's way more interesting.
Just bring it back on track.
Yeah, exactly. We've
Well done getting it back on track.
thank the Lord for that.
Anyone had any barley from Fife recently?
Yes, no, Angus, no.
But I mean, sorry, Gregor.
No, I was going to say. Anywho, I ended up going back to Swee. Managed to get a job back eventually, and worked there for a year. And I worked with Jake as well, who you know.
Yeah,
we do.
That's how I met Jake.
There's so many like the.
Never worked with Ali Baxter though.
Did you not?
Never
That's
worked with him.
disappointing.
I know him,
Yeah.
obviously, and he knows me, but I've never worked together.
I've heard it's a bit of a nightmare, but that's just between us.
Well, he put it as his 3 drams. So.
Exactly.
Put Raasay and Okra.
Pick Raasay as well.
Well,
It's got to be a good
No,
guy.
shout out to Ali. He's not a nightmare. He's a great guy. But the I find it. So is Tweeddale still going? Is that?
Yeah, so we've currently got a 30-year-old Tweedle available through Cashier. So it was 28 years in bourbon and 2 years in Amontillado. This last 2 years in Amontillado.
So this is still an independent bottler.
Yeah, it's still available.
Within the brand.
Within the brand.
Cashier's like our indie bottler.
It's part of R&B Distillers.
It's the big part of R&B.
Yeah.
Yes. No. So what we're looking at plans-wise for Raasay in the future? What does the future hold for? Because look, let's talk about we've had a good few people on the podcast where you have to talk about it. Everyone's saying it's a difficult time at the moment.
It's a really difficult time, particularly export, and everyone's got a different view on it. But in my view, we've had like at least 15 years, great years for Scotch whisky. So there's probably going to be 7 to 10 not so good years in Scotch whisky, and I think my view would be let's plan for that, and if you plan for the worst, and Gregor and the team work as hard as they're working, and we think sales every minute of the day, then hopefully we'll see the other side of it.
And do you have to look at, does that, again, one of the things that Arthur Motley spoke a lot about was saying that it was, he said he was saying similar to maybe like what you're saying, is he saw, for 10 years no one really had to sell whiskey sold itself. And he said, so now we're having to see people work really, really hard, but also probably not greedy is the wrong word, but I think when times were good, everyone was quite happy to go, we could make, instead of it being I don't know what your outturns of your bottles every single, their numbers are like, but, let's just say for argument's sake, instead of a 5,000 bottle run going, let's do a 10,000 bottle run because it's selling, and of course, when it's selling, sell it, but at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just at a very different stage, because as I say, we're a young business, we're kind of, we're growing from a nil base. It's all about that growth and trying to sustain that growth. But I think, it was a really interesting. I've listened to some really interesting discussions, and some of the things that come out of that is that if you think about 80 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, the kind of boom and bust that have been in the past, there's nobody about at senior level in any of the big international whiskey companies that remember any of that,
right.
because that's not your working lifespan. So there's that. Then to your point is in recent times, and I think it was Dawn from Whisky Exchange sometimes said we've just forgotten how to sell. And I think there's a certain amount of truth in that. What I would say as a young business who's been unknown and trying to build a brand is, like, I think we've got a team of people who know how to sell. Yeah. And I think, Bill's big thing from day one is we have to sell every minute of every day.
Well, if he's coming from an entrepreneurial background, from that perspective, he's got to know.
So I think it's incredibly valid. And if you don't think sales,
I always think of a hospitality background for myself for a long period of time, and I always think if you get people in bars who are really excited about your product, I always think of, with you guys, I always think of Ensign Yurt. Yeah. Because Alan and Andy are like absolute Raasay champions, and whenever I go in there, they're like.
Well, the thing is, like, we did a cask for. We did a single cask for them, and we have done that for other bars as well.
Yeah. Well, it was Cody. I think it was Cody Reynolds who said, there's no better. Was it Cody that said it on the podcast? There's no better brand ambassador for anyone than somebody working behind the bar for you.
Totally.
So if you can get into
the main thing is staff education. If you can get people, definitely in bars, but also shops or anyone that will be willing to listen. But if you can get bartenders
that knows about
or if you can just get your son employed behind it.
Exactly. So this what it is. Because your laddie's actually served us a dram or two over because he works upstairs.
He keeps sending me bottles of he keeps sending me pictures of this and going, it's nearly empty, Dad.
So is this it now? You just got to put the family to work and get them all working behind bars around Scotland selling Raasay.
I think it all helps, but I think in seriousness, like it is about it's like
staff education is key.
Staff education is key, but also collaboration. So like working with the Thompson brothers and doing the whiskey bars of Scotland. And,
well, the Thompson brothers, the Mystery Malt, that's been a big success. Younger distilleries, and I watched a video with them. We talked about it on the podcast. Like watching the video where Phil is trying to open a flagon, and Simon's talking. But one of the things that they were saying is like the feedback has been that more new distilleries want to work with the Mystery Malt angle because it's probably an opportunity for a lot of people to get a chance to drink something that they would maybe never have drank before. It's a new distillery.
It's just a brilliant idea.
Yeah, they've done. And did you have to plan, like, you don't get into whiskey, you only have to, you speak to someone that's maybe worked in whiskey for 10 years, 15 years max, and they'll tell you how cyclical whiskey can be. How there's good times and then there's not so good. Or as somebody said to me, there's very good times and then there's good times. So he was sort of saying, I'll put it into perspective, but that's maybe working at the top, a bigger brand level. Companies aren't recording the same level of profits anymore, but they're still companies they're not reporting major, the big guys aren't reporting major losses.
You just have to pivot.
I think it's
But did you have to plan? When you're sitting down and you're looking at the business model, and you're going, right, I tell you what, we're going to start something now. It's going to take X amount of years to build this thing. It's then going to take X amount of years before we can actually put anything out that calls it whiskey.
Yeah.
You don't have a crystal ball. You can't suddenly say when things are going to go good and when things are maybe going to take a downturn. But you're obviously going to have to take that into consideration when you're starting a distillery, that there will be ups and there's going to be downs in the industry.
Absolutely, and again, the fact of the matter is we have a 10-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 1-year plan. That's how it works, and that's again structured through Bill and Miriam, and it's absolutely right.
That's all I need.
And I think the point is that hopefully because of the way they make whiskey, we've got flexibility, and we can address changes in the market. Hopefully.
I suppose Woody and Megan, we at Woodrow's of Edinburgh, we were in their warehouse a couple of weeks ago, and that's what they said. Is they said, well, actually, we're only 3 years old as an independent bottler, but they said like all week because they've not known a time where they've not had to sell whiskey because they're so new. Yeah. I suppose that would probably be similar from your front is the fact that you've not actually known enough of. We don't need to worry about selling it.
We've not ever been in that position and won't be for a long time. Is the honest answer, and I think I don't know if you've got a different view on it, but
no, I think all I would say is I think it's generally the whiskey industry right now is a bit of a difficult time. It's maybe in the good time rather than the very good time is what you say, but I think it's very easy to get caught up in that mindset, but realistically there's always going to be people that drink whiskey and ultimately want to buy whiskey, and so as I said before, like you need to look at different avenues that you maybe didn't look at before or maybe haven't considered. You take the Indian market for example. I know I've seen your pod when you were out there. It's like it's the biggest market for Scotch right now, but yet still such a minimal amount, and even if that grows by 2 or 3%, all new distilleries are laughing if they're drinking our stuff, and so it's
it's a good problem to have.
There's plenty room to grow. You just need to be able to pivot.
Can I ask about markets for yourselves? I was in Japan in February, and I was so shocked to see how many of Raasay bottlings I'd seen for for bottling I forget the name of the this shop, but
Liquor Mountain.
Liquor Mountain, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's another one that they do like the chess pieces on. It's like Shizoa or.
Well, you
Yeah,
Is there quite a good market there for you, or is there any markets globally that?
So
really
we're
seem to
in
take it on?
52 different markets around the world now. The UK, Gregor, what Gregor's saying in the UK is great. You know, it's good, and you know, obviously we built out, you know, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Inverness, the Highlands and Islands. You know, that are definitely our stronghold. You know, Scott Fraser moved down to London. You know, we're trying to grow that in the UK, but it is important to like have all these different markets. And yes, China's down. Yes, Germany's down. France has been pretty steady. You know, Adele's out there now.
Every day.
So yeah, it's about. I guess there's 5 key markets that we want to focus on, but at the same time having Japan and South Korea. Seki are distillers from Korea, so that's great because he can go and do tastings when he goes home. It's all handy, but it is about having that and trying to grow that number of markets. I think there's
well, we get ourselves about. So if you're ever looking for anyone, to do a bit of work with you.
Fancy a tasting in Korea?
Absolutely.
We would do a whiskey. We could do a distillery spotlight in Seoul.
We would,
The Raasay distillery spotlight in
I'm
Seoul.
going to be in Seoul end of January, beginning of February. So
Yeah.
That's great to see some of the bottles around.
Yeah.
I'm headed to Japan, not for work, but in January, so that's exciting.
He'll be working. He doesn't know he's doing
Terrific.
tastings.
Do we go with that bag full of bottles?
Now, the last thing you brought us is this newmake spirit.
Newmake spirit,
Take us through this thing, because
I just saw
Chuck
Angus
said it was
swirling water around his glass and then taking a big glug, and I thought he's
Chuck
not
said-
just used to make spirit.
Chuck said this was dangerously drinkable. I've not tried it, but the nose
so
is exceptional.
I think going back to the design of the distillery, right? So
Yeah.
I made the mistake of sitting in a very early meeting with chemical engineers talking about process design, and they said, well, what do you want to make? And I said, I want it to be an elegant spirit. Now that means nothing to a process engineer, but hopefully this is elegant. So we take very narrow cut points. This is our peated spirit, so we go on at 72, we come off at 65, so it's quite a narrow cut. We're not trying to get into those big, heavier phenols. It's Highland peat, so we're looking for that aromatic, fragrant wood smoke. But our newmake spirit is actually quite sweet.
Yeah.
And it actually does have that dark fruit blackcurrant thing going on. So at this stage, that can only come from the fermentations and the lactic fermentation.
You can smell that,
The reason our newmake sweet is our water's ever so slightly hard. So obviously most distilleries in Scotland, the water's soft. The harder the water, the sweeter your newmake spirit is. So.
It's really nice. It makes you wonder why we bother maturing
Maturing it, Right, don't tell anyone that, guy.
I know, we don't usually do anything with newmake, so thought we'd bring it along for...
Lovely. Well, thank you very much.
That's terrific. I think the nose on it's
Lovely.
lovely.
Right, lads, what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 drams. So we'll do
Okay.
3 drams each. If you want to do 3 drams each, do you want to do 1 each and then one
Right.
boat?
I have
Did
2
you want
drams,
it?
I could probably come up with a third one if you've got 3.
I can find 3 drams. There's
What
2.
3 drams? Well, what I'll do is if Gregor's already got his
I've
lined
got
up,
2, definitely.
you can go. We'll do 1 for 1, okay? So Gregor, we'll come to you for your first one then.
Right, I'm going to get the brand one out of the way, but it's not because just to be on brand, it's because of where we are. So the first time I ever drank Raasay was in this pub with my pal, where, I don't know, even 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when I was working at Swee and I was just getting into the whiskey industry, and he lived just on Gorgie Road there, and he was like, I think there's a pretty good whiskey pub around here, and I was like, I don't know, I'll follow you. And so we came here, and Raasay was on that little sheet that's on the side of the bar,
Alright,
cliffy sheet, and I was like, I've seen that at my work, I'll try that one. And so that was the first time I ever tried Raasay. So just the normal Raasay, which is now called the dram. Back then it wasn't. The dram. Back then wasn't called the dram, but now is called the dram. That would be my first one, but that's the brand one out of the way. That's the brand one out of the way.
Brilliant. So you've got just the dram.
The job is safe.
Yeah. If the bosses are all listening, one's here, but the rest of them.
Great. Alasdair, what about yourself?
So I'll tell you about the one I've got in my glass. So this is kind of one of my go-to whiskies. It's could be responsible, could have some influence in the design of Raasay. This is a young Caol. This is a 6-year-old Caol. Interestingly, fully matured in sherry. So first fill sherry. So it's sulphur and peat basically. And Caol is one of those that I would always go.
Well, I was surprised because when you ordered that, and that you specifically asked for like a Caol, but you also specifically asked for like a young one. Yeah. So what is it about a young Caol that you like so much?
I think. So I think it's it's more back to the distillery character. I think you get more of the distillery character at a younger age. You get more of the peat at a younger age. So we talked briefly about cask year earlier. We did a 5-year-old Caol under the cask year. I selected the cask, and I think at that age Caol just shines for me. It just it's one of my favourite islands.
Excellent.
Brilliant. Right, Gregor, dram number 2.
Dram number 2 is another, pretty standard one. I'm a big fan of Open 14. It's one that I first sort of came to like. It's not the first dram I ever had, but it's one that I've just really enjoyed. My missus also happens to be from Oban, so it ties
so
in
you've got
nicely.
one on brand and one sticking in with the family.
Yeah. But it's one I just think it's solid. It's one that I would buy for my mates who I'm kind of getting into whiskey. They weren't particularly into whiskey before my job, but I'm getting a few of them on side now, and Open 14 is one of them that's kind of getting them
Terrific.
in.
It's not something I drink. You drink a bit of Open, eh? You like an Open?
Yeah. Open 14 is nice. Yeah, I really like the one from Oban. I really like is I like the Distillers edition.
The Distillers
ones.
edition,
They're always very nice.
Yeah.
It's just I think it's just pretty solid all round.
Yeah.
It's not an exciting.
No, that's
as a choice as like a younger Caol, but.
No, can I just before we finish? Can I have another one of these? Because
please do.
I just I've broken the promise to myself that I wasn't going to have too many drams.
I'm going to finish this and I want to.
Best laid plans of mice and men.
Yeah. I mean, after the weekend I've had, I've sort of said like, and I did say to the current wife when I was leaving, like,
Current wife,
it's a trope of the pod. Don't worry. It's not. So anyway, I did say, I'll have a couple of drams and then I'll be home. Just newmake now.
What time is it?
Yeah, but a cracking drop there and very, very, very tasty. Right, Alasdair, dram number 2 for yourself.
Dram number 2 would be a Balvenie. Balvenie was one of the first whiskies that I ever when I drank it, I thought that's elegant. That elegant element coming back in, and this is when it was still in that. Remember that dumpy brandy bottle it used to be in. So a few years ago.
Time, age statement or type? Or
Just it's kind of. Probably just a straight Balvenie 10 from that era, when it was in that bottle. That was just to me like
the Glenfiddich triangular.
It was to me it was like a cognac bottle. It had a long neck on it, and it was just to me that was just an amazingly lovely, elegant drinking.
You know, I think I've never done it. I've got a book here of all the episodes that we've done, and everyone's 3 drams.
Balvenie might be one of the most.
I think Balvenie's probably one of the ones that's popped up so many times. Balvenie 14 Caribbean, particularly.
Caribbean cask, yes.
But at the same time, I think Balvenie, there must be. It's a dram I don't drink an awful lot of.
No.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
it's what I meant when I was talking to the chemical engineers and I said elegant. That's what I meant. It's like that's something where it's like just an elegant Speyside, exceptionally well made. Whiskey that maybe gets overlooked.
Right. Right, dram number 3 for yourself, Greg.
Dram number 3 for myself. This is my favourite whiskey of all time. Ballantine's 17.
Oh, you're speaking to the.
Women in Glentalkers, that is.
Yeah. The reason I started liking it is because it was, the amber bar that's in Sri. When it was, I don't think it's produced anymore.
No, was that not like? Was that? I think I bought a few bottles of that during lockdown.
Well, that must have been when it went out, because that's when I was at 3, because it was on the shelves all of a sudden, and then it wasn't on the shelf.
Yeah.
Anywho,
Graeme came in and bought a lot, I think.
rinsed it. So it was a cheap dram in the amber bar. So I started drinking it then because it was still Well, I just finished uni at the time, so I was not as
Yeah.
yeah,
Not as flush as you
yeah.
are now with all your commission
No,
you're making with your sales.
that's how I was going to make that sound, but that's not the case at all. Anyway, so I really enjoyed that, and then the last time I had it, I was in Latvia with my pal quite recently,
Right.
and I saw it there, and then with the same pal I went to Bulgaria with, and it was there. So it seems to be in Eastern Europe.
That's where we need to go for a Valentine's 17.
There you are.
Yeah, that's the only places I see it anymore.
Because I think, am I right in saying they used to bottle Valentine's 7 was a sort of core range, but then did it go away and then it came back again?
Yeah. It's one of these things we've said on the podcast. If you've got a favourite release, and savour it because it might not be here tomorrow.
Oh,
I generally don't see it anymore. I mean, it's on the auction sites and things like that, but like generally around, even on bars, I don't really see it. Apart from in
because they brought a Glenburgie release around the same time. Was it a Glenburgie 21 or something at the same time?
They did like 3 different Valentines, Malt and Duff, Glen Talkers, and then
there's a Malt and Duff one as well that I used to get.
But I think Valentine 17 is still available, but it just might depend on the territory you're in.
Yeah.
So off to Eastern Europe,
Serbia and Latvia, you can.
Malt and Duff's an interesting one. Malt and Duff is one of the single malts in the Tweedale when I was making the Tweedale, and it's just an amazing whiskey that people just don't talk about.
Can I just say I just had some of this and it is class. We did.
I didn't mention my opinions on it, but that's absolutely super.
It's like super.
So I mean, to me, what that does is like for all these people who go turn their nose up at single grain, you just give them that, and because it's peated. And they don't know what it is. They just they start naming it islands.
Yeah,
it's such an interesting twist into that peat as well. Yeah, it kind of goes like, oh yeah, here's fresh citrusy notes. And it's like, and there you go.
Yeah,
but it's still super light as well. It's awesome.
And it's refill bourbon, so you're just getting what it is.
It's gonna have a little tiny drop.
That's so good.
Thank you very much. He's right after your third and
final one is more in the aspirational category, but. I once bought, and I think it was a Flora and Fauna bottling, it was a Glen Royal.
Oh wow.
And I think of all the whiskies I've ever drunk, I drank it thinking, wow.
Really?
But didn't, unfortunately at the time, twig that I should have gone immediately and bought another 3, 4, 5 bottles.
Well, do you know what? You've done the exactly same thing as my dad, because my family, through my dad, are from Stonehaven originally, although I grew up in Addington. And when that distillery closed, the shop that my great uncle worked in at the time had stock of Glen Royal, and my dad bought several bottles, and they'd all just disappeared through the kind of
whiskey. And I went back to buy a bottle, and I actually managed to find a bottle, and it was $2,000. And at that time, I was like, but I still should have done this.
Wow.
That's a stinger.
Wow.
I think the original bottle I bought was like 50 quid.
Yeah. It's mental. I mean,
but it was genuinely such an amazing whiskey.
But this is interesting because I mean, my dad isn't really a big whiskey drinker, and he said I think Glen Royal, it was closed. It was like fairly average whiskey from what I, reputationally from what I, from what he heard. So he just drank it and it was gone. But and then he's seen the prices. He said maybe I should have. One or two of the bottles, but it's interesting someone coming with such high praise for Glen Royal.
No, it was. I think
first mention on the pod.
I've mentioned it on the pod.
Well, first what 3 drams.
I've mentioned it. First what 3 drams, but I have mentioned it on the pod.
Right.
When there was talk of what distillery would you reopen, I said Glen Royal.
There you go.
Right enough.
But although it's completely demolished now, but
And how well did I do not mention Isle of Raasay?
Yeah, but if you've got
I got it in.
Or a Tweedale.
Got a brand there. But how can people who are listening to this find out more? I mean, we've got Scott Moore coming over in the next couple of weeks from Memphis, Tennessee. He's coming over.
Oh yeah.
He's doing the Eat, Sleep, Dram, Repeat experience. He's coming over to Edinburgh. We've got 2 big days lined up actually with him because we've got a Friday day out with Scott Moore, and again that'll finish. I'm pretty certain it will finish here, not in the dungeon. But basically, we never know. But basically, so it's an open invitation. Scott has said to me to please put out to the podcast listeners, pals of the pod. There is an open invitation. Scott Moore is in town on the when?
21st, Friday the 21st.
Friday the 21st, we'll be out and about, and then I think on the 22nd we're going to be, whatever state we're in. I've hired a driver.
I can't. Well, I'm not going to be there for that.
A mystery driver.
We've got a mystery driver lined up.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So we've got a party here. We've got a Tamdhu tasting. I think we're going to a Tamdhu
On the 21st?
On the Friday evening.
Right.
And then we've got a few other things lined up. But basically, yeah. So that's what. So, but yeah, Scott will be listening to this over in the States. He'll quite easily travel 6 hours cross border lines to get to another liquor store that he knows is a different importer.
You'd be more than welcome. You'd be more than welcome to come up to Raasay.
Well, but just can you get hold of Raasay
we have
over
rooms.
in the States?
You definitely can.
Yeah, so he's got that. But what about other? How can people find out more about Raasay Distillery, Isle of Raasay, what's going on?
Best place to go to our website.
Yeah, website.
Instagram.
And you guys are on
Facebook.
socials as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a club called the Slange Club. Just sign up.
Right.
Online, you'll get all the updates. Some special offers as well.
Special access to special bottlings as
well.
well.
And how can people keep up to date on the census of the Isle of Raasay now?
Well, he's just
Raasay Residents Facebook page. But
Yeah,
I think
you have to be invited and you have to be a resident. But other than that,
right. Because I just want to keep up to date with the next girl that's going to be born on the Isle of Raasay is going to be.
Slange Club. That's the answer.
Right.
That's the key. Slange Club keeps you up.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, guys, for coming on, and thank you very much for the fantastic whiskies and the conversation as well. If you listen to Whisky Stories Podcast, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for everybody who likes and shares and gets involved in the podcast. Don't forget, there are still bottles available of our Glenelgan spirit drink bottled at Uno Mas for our big birthday bash. You're getting a cracking deal there, £65 plus your postage and packaging. You'll get it on the Woodrows of Edinburgh website. We've got loads of other stuff going on, guys. We've got, like I say, Scott Moore coming over on the 21st, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Keep up to date on the Whisky Stories Facebook page. We've got weekend dram roll call going on. I want to see this will be going out the Thursday. Let's see loads of Raasay bottles on the Friday. So that they can eventually convince.
Or any Tweeddale bottles.
Tweeddale or Raasay.
Tweeddale, go on cashier for Tweeddale.
Cash share.
By the way, I highly recommend that peated.
Really?
Peated single malt.
Chuck's tail. Ross isn't here, but Chuck's tail is wagging.
Don't get me wrong. Everything we've had is great. I am genuinely concerned. Because I can't talk. How drinkable the newmake spirit is worrying at 63.5%.
Yeah.
No, everything was great, and that Tweeddale's class.
Well, I'm going for the Drammers cast number 3.
100% champagne.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Absolutely love it. It's a cracking drop. Well, anyway, guys, thank you very much for coming along.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. All the very best. Slàinte mhath.
Cheers. Cheers.